stuff I really admire about Indonesians, they're really friendly. Even when I was brand new, I couldn't speak Indonesian. I was a total just, I felt like a tourist. I had no idea what was going on. But even then, the Indonesians were just, they were so friendly and so welcoming to me, and they always made me feel like I was welcome there. They didn't make fun of me for not being able to speak Indonesian very well. They would correct me if I said something wrong, but if I said something they didn't understand, they would just ask me, oh, what? But in a really nice way. And they were just so nice and so friendly. And every person I would meet in the street, I'd say, oh, hi, good morning, how are you doing? And they'd say, oh, I'm doing well, how are you? And people would be happy to talk with me. Whereas here in America, a lot of times you walk by somebody on the street and you say, oh, hey, how are you doing? They say, yeah, I'm good, whatever, and they walk away. In Indonesia, they're so open and so warm and friendly. Differences between living in Indonesia and living in the US. One of the big ones is showering. Here we have running water and showers. A lot of times in Indonesia we'd use a bak mandi. So you just take like a bucket and just dump cold water on yourself to bathe, which sounds awful, but it was really nice when I was living in Semarang and it was like 40 degrees Celsius every day. And we'd get home after biking around and just be super sweaty and super hot. You get that nice cold water over yourself, feels really good. See other stuff. Things are really expensive here. Indonesia's much cheaper, which is nice. I can buy food there for like 14,000 rupiah. It's like fairly expensive, and that's about $1 here. Whereas lunch here is $5 is cheap. So it's a lot cheaper in Indonesia. It's a lot hotter there and humid most of the time, which I like. It's too cold here and too dry. I think public transportation is better in Indonesia. Well, public transportation is further reaching. You can take an angkot wherever you want. Angkots are super gross and small and just awful, but you can get anywhere you want with them. So an angkot, it's a van that's smaller than a van in the US or bigger. It's like slightly larger than a minivan. And it's got a door on one side, and then the inside is gutted, and it has benches along the sides. And they will just stuff people in there, and then you pay maybe 2,000 or 3,000 depending on how far you're going, which is like 15-20 cents US. And they will fit 15, 16 people into this thing. Some of them, they'll have music pumping, and angkot drivers are the craziest drivers you will ever meet anywhere in the world. They're weaving through traffic like they're on a scooter, but they're in a big van. Sometimes you fear for your life, but you will get where you're going faster than you will with just about anything else. For big culture shocks for me, I think obviously people in Indonesia, not a whole lot of them speak English, so that was hard for me when I first got there, but I really love Indonesian. It's a great language. People there are really open about their religion, which I think is very different from the US, where we don't talk about it a lot. Over there, it's on your official government-issued identification, and everybody will talk about it. Of course, most people there are Muslim, which is awesome. I love Muslims. I've become really good friends with so many of them, and they're just really great people, and I always felt like I could talk to them and we could have really interesting discussions, but that was obviously very different from the US. It took a while for me to understand how to use the money, because it's a very cash-driven society, and their money is completely different from ours. It's all in thousands, so the smallest bill is 1,000, the largest is 100,000. In the last city I lived in Bogor, and there's this big zoo called Taman Safari, and so we went there a little while before I went home to go and just hang out, me and my friends. And at one point there was an opportunity where you could take a picture with an orangutan, and I thought that was cool because orangutan are originally from Indonesia. They're only native to Indonesia, so I thought, oh, I've got to get a picture with one of these. So I pay the money to get a ticket to go and take a picture with this baby orangutan, and I step in and I stand next to him, and he just grabs onto my shirt and starts pulling me all over, and he grabs my glasses and pulls them off my face and is throwing them all over the place and like attacking me. So I have some really funny pictures of me being mauled by this baby orangutan who was hanging onto my side, and it was awesome and I loved it. Right after I got to Indonesia, it was my third day, and me and some of my friends decided to go to a waterfall up in the mountains near the city where we were living. And I was brand new. I barely spoke any Indonesian. I didn't really know what was going on. And we go, and my friends tell me we're going to get on this bus, and we're going to ride it up into the mountains, and then we're going to take this other thing called an angkot. We're going to take that up to this waterfall. So I get on this bus, and I'm pretty tall. I'm almost 2 meters tall. and this bus was not designed for people that tall, so my knees were pushed up against my chest like that, and we sat there for 45 minutes up into the mountains, get out, and I step out and I look, and there are monkeys just everywhere because we're up in the mountains next to this waterfall, and there are these monkeys all over, and my friends are telling me don't go near the monkeys because they will steal your stuff. And then we had to hike down into a waterfall, and it was one of the most beautiful places I'd ever seen. It was a waterfall in this valley up in the mountains in central Java, and it was so hot and so high up that I almost died. But it was so pretty and just an amazing experience. Some of my favorite foods from Indonesia, I mean, obviously you have to say rendang, because that's one of the best foods in the entire world. I love nasi goreng, I love mie goreng. I used to eat a lot of warteg. There was a place in Jakarta where I would eat a lot of tempe orek. That was so good. Well, so rendang it's like beef that's cooked in coconut milk and spices, which is really good. Nasi goreng is fried rice, but it has certain kinds of spices, and it's got this sweet soy sauce over it. Mie goreng is the same thing but noodles. And then warteg, it's a restaurant where you can get rice and then a bunch of like vegetables or other stuff. So tempeh, it's a kind of soybean product, I guess. So sort of like tofu, but processed differently. And then it's cooked in a bunch of spices and it's got the sauce over it, and it's one of my favorite foods. Some crazy foods that I ate in Indonesia. I mean, you eat chicken head and chicken feet pretty often. Those are all right. I'm not a huge fan, but they're okay. You eat goat head sometimes. In one of the cities I served in, one of their specialties is a roasted goat head. Also a chicken head. It's like you got like the head, and then it's like the same way you would eat a chicken leg, where you just eat the meat off of the bones. Same thing like the feet. The goat head I never actually had. I was going to, but then we ended up being busy that day, and then I moved, so I didn't get the chance. I really liked es degan, or es kelapa muda. It's like coconut juice. That was really good. I used to get that a lot. The fresh fruit juice is super good, basically anywhere. It's really cheap. And there's this soda called Badak up in Medan, and that's really good. It's like sort of like root beer, but a little bit fruitier. And it's probably my favorite soda. You can only find it in that one city. One time, me and my friend, we were biking we were in the city of Jogja, and we had to bike about 7 miles, and we had to bike all the way across the city to get to meet with one of our friends. And we started biking, and it was nice and sunny out, but it was the rainy season, and so we were a little bit worried. And about 10 minutes into the bike ride, it started raining. And then it kept raining, and it kept raining, and it kept raining, and it was just pouring. We finally got to our friend's house, and we were over there for a while, and then when we left, it was still raining, and all of the streets were flooded about 2 feet high, and we were riding bikes. So when we would pedal, our feet would go down underneath the water every time we'd go down, and then come back up out of the water as we would keep biking. And it was all the way like that for the however many kilometers we had to bike back home. That was crazy. The bike would stay on the ground because it was heavy enough, but it was just your feet would be going completely underwater, so you'd be biking way slower because it's way hard to pedal when your feet are going in and out of water. In my last city, I became friends with this guy. He was from Manado, but he lived in Bogor and had been there for a while, and his wife was Javanese from Jogja, I think. And we became friends with them when we'd go over pretty often. And one day we would usually meet with them around 3 in the afternoon because his daughter was a badminton player. She had practice, so we had to work around her schedule. But one day we called him and said, hey, can we come over today? And he said, yeah, but come over at like 10 instead of at 3 like usual. We said, okay, that's fine. So we go over at 10 and we hang out with him for a while, and he says, okay, Elders, I've got this. I have a surprise for you. I've cooked you lunch because you're here for lunchtime. I don't want you to have to go and buy lunch somewhere, find lunch, so I've cooked you traditional Manadonese food. And I'd never eaten Manadonese food because that's on one of the islands off to the east, and I'd never been there. And he brings out like 6 plates of food, and it was some of the most delicious food ever. And we just had the best time of just chatting with this family who we loved them and they loved us, and we had just delicious food. and great conversation, and it perfectly summed up my experience in Indonesia of just feeling so welcome and so loved by the people. And by the time I had to go home, I didn't want to leave. I love Indonesia, and I'm hoping to get back as soon as I can. I guess one thing that I just want to talk about real quick is just the culture of Indonesia, I guess, the like traditional culture. I'm a huge fan of that kind of stuff, and Indonesia has such a rich cultural heritage, much more so I think than the United States does, where when I lived in Solo, I had a chance to go and see wayang, which is traditional shadow puppets done, and there was a live gamelan, which is like this percussion orchestra, and I got to see that live, and that was just really cool. There are just so many interesting things about the culture of Indonesia. There's such a campuran, there's such like a mix of so many different cultures there, cultures from India and China and the Middle East. It's a really fascinating place, and I love it. Yeah, so learning Indonesian was not super hard. It's a fairly easy language to learn, I think. It's an easy language to get decent at. It's a really hard language to master or speak like a native speaker, to speak really fluently, mostly because there's a really sharp divide between Indonesian that's baku, or like formal, and Indonesian that's informal, like bahasa gaul. And that was one of the hardest hurdles for me, was trying to learn how to talk to people my age on the street, because if I came up to them and started talking like I'd learned here in America, they would laugh at me because what are you talking about? It's like if I was speaking like I was reading Shakespeare to an American. It's like that's not how people talk. They talk completely differently. That's definitely the hardest part about learning Indonesian. But it's a really cool language. It sounds different from almost any other language that I've ever heard. It's just totally unique. If I could say anything to the people of Indonesia right now, I guess it would be that you all are amazing, and I'm so thankful for all of the opportunities that I had to interact with so many of you. And obviously there are a lot of you I haven't met, but I know that you all are great people, and I love all of you, and I always felt so welcome there, and hopefully I can come back soon.